What happens when a billionaire, bored and arrogant, tries to humiliate a waitress by asking her for financial advice? He expected her to say, "Buy low, sell high," or just blush and walk away. He thought it was a joke, but he and his two sycophantic partners were not prepared for her answer. They were talking about a $500 million deal, a corporate secret. And when she spoke her first words, the laughter in the room died, and a multi-billion-dollar empire was shaken to its core. This isn't a story about a joke. It's a story about what happens when you underestimate the person pouring your water. The air at the Crimson Steer was thick enough to carve. It smelled of old money, dry-aged beef, and the faint, acidic tang of $1,000 wine bottles being decanted. This was Jackson Jack Shaw's natural habitat, though he usually preferred the cleaner, glass and steel ambiance of his own tower. Tonight, however, was a celebration. Jack Shaw, the titan of tech, whose company, Shaw Innovations, had its tentacles in everything from cloud computing to experimental aerospace, was dining with his two top VPs, Henry Coleman and Ben Carter. They were celebrating the quiet, backroom acquisition of Viridian Dynamics, a mid-level biotech firm. The board folded, Ben said, his voice a low, sycophantic rumble. He raised his glass of 82 Lafite. They didn't know what hit them. We got it for a song. It's not a song until the ink is dry and the regulators are appeased, Jack said, not looking up from his phone. He was scrolling through Forbes, watching his own net worth tick upward. It was adequate. Henry, the more nervous of the two, chimed in. Adequate, sir? We got them for $500 million. Their patent portfolio alone is worth that. Jack finally locked his phone and looked at them. His eyes were a pale, Arctic blue, and they held no warmth. Their portfolio was worth that. The market is pricing in the potential. We're paying for the actual. It was sloppy. You left $30 million on the table. You were too eager. Henry and Ben visibly deflated. The celebration soured. This was Jack's way. He didn't just win. He had to be the only one who knew how to win. It was into this charged silence that Aurelia Keller walked. She was the table's waitress for the evening. Her uniform, a crisp white shirt and black apron, was immaculate, but it hung slightly loose on her frame, as if it belonged to someone else. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her face was pale, dominated by large, intelligent eyes that were currently fixed on the water glass at the edge of their table. She moved with an efficiency that made her almost invisible. She refilled Henry's glass without him noticing. She cleared the bread plates with the silent grace of a ghost. Jack, however, noticed everything. He watched her. There was a stillness to her, a tightly coiled precision that felt out of place. She wasn't just tired, she was contained. "Another bottle, Mr. Shaw?" she asked, her voice low and neutral. Jack waved a dismissive hand. "We're moving on to the Macallan 50, and bring my associates, whatever they're having." Henry and Ben ordered cheaper, 18-year-old blends, not wanting to presume. Aurelia nodded once and turned to leave. That's when Jack decided to have his fun. The wine, the successful but boring deal, the obsequious nature of his men. It all made him feel a little cruel. "Wait, miss," he called out. Aurelia stopped and turned, her face a mask of professional patience. "Yes, sir. You've been very efficient." He smiled, a thin reptilian gesture. Henry and Ben saw the smile and immediately tensed, unsure if they should snicker or be silent. "You're good with numbers, I assume. All those tips, adding and subtracting. It's a lot." Aurelia's expression didn't change. "I manage, sir." "Good, good." Jack leaned forward, lacing his fingers. "See, my friends and I, we have a little financial problem. A debate. We just spent, let's call it $500 million on a new company. Tell me." He paused for dramatic effect, making sure the nearby tables could hear his casual magnanimity. "What's your expert financial advice for us? What should we do with our new toy? You tell me." Henry let out a choked snort. Ben looked down at his plate, grinning. It was a joke, a condescending power play joke from a man who owned continents. They expected her to blush, to stammer, to say, "I don't know, sir," or "invest in stocks?" Aurelia was silent for a full 3 seconds. The ambient noise of the restaurant, the clinking of silver, the murmur of conversations seemed to fade into a dull roar. She looked not at Henry or Ben, but directly at Jackson Shaw. Her eyes, no longer patient, were suddenly sharp, analytical. "You mean Viridian dynamics," she said. It wasn't a question. The grins vanished from Henry's and Ben's faces. Jack's smile froze, the corners of his mouth twitching. His blood ran cold. The deal was unannounced. It was known only to their respective boards and legal teams. Aurelia continued, her voice still low, but now cutting through the expensive air like a scalpel. "And you paid $500 million? You weren't eager, Mr. Shaw. You were fools. You're overpaying by at least 18%, probably closer to 22%. Jack was speechless. Their flagship product, a third-generation gene sequencing patent, is based on a research model that's about to be deprecated by a new CRISPR-Cas9 variant coming out of a lab in Germany. Their Q3 projections are based entirely on that single, failing patent portfolio." She took a small step closer, lowering her voice further. "And their supply chain? It's 80% leveraged against the rising cost of lithium for their portable sequencing units, a cost that your own company's new battery division is responsible for. You just bought a boat anchor, Mr. Shaw, and you used your own ship to deliver it to yourself," she finished. The silence was absolute. Henry's mouth was open. Ben looked like he was going to be sick. Jack Shaw, the man who had terrified Wall Street and Silicon Valley for 2 decades, had been left utterly, completely speechless. Jack's mind, which normally operated like a high-frequency trading algorithm, had just blue-screened. He stared at the waitress. She hadn't broken eye contact. There was no triumph in her gaze, no gotcha smirk. It was the flat, cold look of a pathologist delivering a diagnosis. Henry Coleman was the first to find his voice, which came out as an indignant squeak. "Now, you listen here. Who do you think you are? You can't just... You're fired. Manager, get the manager." Aurelia didn't flinch. She didn't even look at Henry. Her focus remained laser-locked on Jack. "Shut up, Henry," Jack whispered. His voice was dangerously quiet. The Arctic blue in his eyes was flash-freezing. He turned his full, terrifying attention to Aurelia. "Who are you?" "I'm Aurelia Keller," she said simply. "Your waitress. Would you like me to bring that Macallan 50 now?" "How did you know the name?" Jack demanded, ignoring her question. "Viridian Dynamics. That name was not spoken at this table. It was not in any public filing." "You said patent portfolio and biotech," Aurelia replied, her voice steady. "Henry," she nodded at him, "mentioned getting them for a song. Ben," she nodded at him, said the board folded. There are only 2 mid-cap biotech firms with weak boards and strong portfolios in play right now, Viridian and Cytogen. Your acquisition of Cytogen would be an antitrust nightmare, as Shaw Innovations already competes in their primary market. That leaves Viridian. It wasn't a hard guess. Jack was stunned by the cold, brutal logic. She hadn't overheard. She had deduced. The rest of it, Jack pressed. The patent, the lithium. How? This time a flicker of something, impatience, fatigue crossed her face. The German paper on the new CRISPR variant was published in Nature 6 weeks ago. Anyone in the space would have seen it. The lithium leverage. You'd have to cross-reference Viridian's component supplier filings with the public market data from your own battery division. It's all public record. It just takes time to connect the dots. Time, Jack repeated. Time you supposedly have while waiting tables. Ben Carter, seeing an opportunity to regain his footing and impress his boss, surged forward. She's a corporate spy. She has to be. This is a setup, Jack. She's working for Aerotech, or maybe even Pierce Capital. She's been feeding information. Don't be an idiot, Ben, Jack snapped, his fury turning on his VP. A spy doesn't walk up to the table and tell you you're a moron. A spy smiles, takes your order, and sells the information tomorrow. This is something else. He looked back at Aurelia. You just cost yourself $1,000 tip. You might have just cost yourself this job. I am aware, Aurelia said. I also just saved you from having to write down a $90 million loss at your next earnings call, which would have put a significant dent in your quarterly bonus pool. She looked at Henry and Ben. You're welcome. With that, she placed the small, black leather bill folder on the table. My shift just ended. Your meal has been comped, courtesy of the manager I radioed on my way over. Good evening, gentlemen. She turned and began to walk away. Wait! Jack barked. Aurelia stopped but didn't turn around. You were right about one thing, Jack said. His voice was different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a calculating curiosity. I left $30 million on the table. My team, they were too eager. He shot a venomous glare at Henry and Ben, who both shrank in their seats. Get out, Jack said to them. Sir? Henry stammered. Get out, both of you. Go back to the hotel. I'll see you in the morning. And Henry, find a new job. Ben, you're on probation. Now go. The two VPs, white-faced and terrified, practically scrambled from their chairs, grabbing their coats and fleeing the restaurant, leaving their half-drunk, $1,000 glasses of scotch behind. The dining room was silent. Jack Shaw was alone at his table. Aurelia Keller still had her back to him. You're not a waitress, he stated. Tonight I was, she said, her shoulders slumping just a fraction. I'm staying at the Peninsula, Jack said. Suite 2100. Be there tomorrow, 8 a.m. I'm not for hire, Mr. Shaw. I'm not offering you a job, Ms. Keller. I'm offering you a life raft. You clearly have the talent, but you're working at the Crimson Stir. That tells me you're desperate. You're either hiding or you're trapped. I don't care which. 8 a.m. I'm going to find out who you are. He watched her walk away, her back straight, until she disappeared through the polished mahogany doors. Jack Shaw sat alone in the wreckage of his celebratory dinner. He pulled out his phone, not to check his stock, but to make a call. His head of security, a man named Martin, picked up on the first ring. Martin, Jack said, I have a name. Aurelia Keller. Find everything. Jack did not sleep. He sat in the 4,000-square-foot Peninsula suite, a glass of the Macallan 50 in his hand, and stared at the panoramic view of the city. But he didn't see it. He saw only the cold, analytical eyes of his waitress. At 4:17 a.m., his personal encrypted device chimed, a file from Martin. It was labeled Keller A. Jack opened it. The file was thin, which was, in itself, terrifying. Martin could find the bank records of a hermit. For a file to be thin meant the person was either a ghost or had been made a ghost. The file began. Name, Aurelia Keller, age 34. Education, B.A., Economics, summa cum laude, University of Chicago. MBA, Finance, the Wharton School, Palmer Scholar. Jack's eyebrows shot up. A Palmer Scholar, top 5% of the class. This was not some community college prodigy. This was blue chip, gold standard, certified genius. The file continued. Work history, 2015-2020, senior analyst, mergers and acquisitions, Goldman Sachs, New York. Note, commendation record sealed, highly unusual. And then, nothing. From 2020 until last night, there was a 5-year abyss. No credit card applications, no W-2s, no apartment leases. Her last known address was a luxury condo in Tribeca, sold in 2020. Now she was listed as living in a small, rented room in a run-down neighborhood, a place she paid for weekly in cash. What happened in 2020, Martin? Jack spoke to the empty room. He scrolled down. Martin had dug deeper. He found her. She hadn't been a complete ghost. She'd been grey-listed. A note from one of Martin's contacts, a former SEC enforcement agent. Name rings a bell. Keller. She was the target of an internal review at Goldman, accused of front-running a deal. The SEC investigated. We couldn't make the case. The evidence was weird. Too perfect. But Goldman fired her, and the word went out. She's radioactive. No firm on the street will touch her. Jack sat back. So that was it. A scandal. A high flyer who crashed and burned. It explained the job, the desperation, the cash payments. She was an exile from her own world. But it didn't explain how she knew about his Viridian deal. It didn't explain the precision. The anger in her analysis wasn't just at his stupidity. It was at the sloppiness of the deal itself. She was offended by it. At 7:52 a.m., his assistant buzzed. "Mr. Shaw, a Ms. Keller is in the lobby. She does not have an appointment." "Send her up," Jack said. When Aurelia walked in, she looked different. The waitress uniform was gone, replaced by a simple black turtleneck, dark jeans, and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was down, and without the severe bun, she looked younger and infinitely more tired. She carried no purse, no briefcase, just herself. "You came," Jack said, motioning to a white sofa. "You have a very persuasive head of security," Aurelia said, not sitting. "A man named Martin visited my landlord at 6 a.m. My landlord is now concerned." "Martin is efficient," Jack said. "Wharton, Goldman Sachs, a Palmer scholar. You were a rocket ship. Then you just stopped flying." Aurelia's jaw tightened. "You have my resume. Are we done?" "We're just starting." Jack stood and walked to the window. "I did what you said. I connected the dots. I had my real team, not the idiots from last night, run the numbers. You were wrong about one thing." Aurelia's eyes narrowed. "You said I was overpaying by 18%. You were too conservative," Jack said. "Their Q3 numbers weren't just based on the bad patent. They were fabricated. The whole thing is a house of cards. You didn't save me 90 million. You saved me the entire $500 million. He turned to face her. "The deal is dead. I'm invoking the material adverse change clause. The Viridian board is going to sue. They will lose. And in 6 months, when they file for Chapter 11, I'll buy their entire patent portfolio at auction for 10 cents on the dollar." "Good for you," Aurelia said, her voice flat. "That's excellent strategy." "It's your strategy," Jack countered. "Which brings me to my offer. I'm offering you a job. Right now, you'll lead my new internal M&A review. I'll give you a team of 20. I'll give you a $5 million a year salary. I'll give you a signing bonus that will let you buy your old Tribeca condo back." He expected tears, gratitude, or at least negotiation. Instead, Aurelia Keller laughed. It was a cold, dry, bitter sound. "No," she said. Jack was, for the second time in 12 hours, floored. "What? Why? This is your way back in. This is your only way back in. I'm the only person on Earth with the power to scrub your grey list status and make the street forget." "You don't get it, do you?" Aurelia said. walking toward him. "You think this is about money? You think this is about a job? I had the job. I had the condo. I had the rocket ship. And I know what it costs." "What does it cost?" "Everything," she whispered, her voice shaking with a sudden, raw fury. "It costs everything. You want to know what happened in 2020? You want to know why a Palmer scholar from Wharton is serving you overpriced steak?" "Yes," Jack said. "I do." "It was a man," Aurelia said, her eyes vacant. "A man just like you." "His name was Leonard Pierce." Aurelia finally sat, not on the plush sofa, but on a hard, modern art chair by the door, as if planning her escape. "He wasn't like you," she corrected herself, looking at Jack. "You're a shark. You're a predator. But you're honest about it. You eat what you kill. Leonard was a parasite. He was a managing director at Goldman in my M&A group. He was my mentor." Jack remained silent, listening. "He was brilliant," Aurelia continued, her voice a monotone, as if reciting a case study. "He taught me everything. How to read a balance sheet, yes, but also how to read a room, how to find the leverage point, not just in the numbers, but in the person across the table. He was fatherly, or so I thought." She paused, swallowing. "We were working on a major deal, a leveraged buyout of a mid-sized manufacturing company in the Rust Belt, Penco Industries. They made ball bearings. Simple, boring, but they had a massive pension fund. A very overfunded pension fund. I was the lead analyst. I built the model, and it didn't work. The numbers didn't add up. Leonard's projections for post-acquisition revenue were optimistic, wildly so. He was triple-counting synergies, using a depreciation schedule that wasn't legally defensible. I went to him. I said, "Leonard, this is wrong. The math is bad." He just smiled. That's the thing I remember. That smug, Hermes tie-wearing smile. He patted my head, metaphorically, and said, "Don't worry, Aurelia. You're just seeing the trees. I'm seeing the forest." But I couldn't let it go. I dug. I worked all weekend, pulling comps, running my own model. And I found it. He wasn't miscalculating. He was lying. The plan wasn't to save Penco. The plan was to acquire it, load it with debt, terminate the pension, pay out the surplus to the new owners, us, and then sell the company for scrap. He was going to wipe out the pensions of 3,000 workers. It was evil. And it was brilliant. Jack nodded, a flicker of professional respect. The classic vulture play. "It was more than that," Aurelia said, her voice dropping. "It was his play. He had a private equity fund on the side, registered in his wife's name. He was the one buying the debt. He was going to make $100 million, personally, while Goldman took all the risk. He was stealing from the bank, and he was stealing from those 3,000 pensioners. So, I did what you're supposed to do. I gathered the evidence. I put the two models side by side. I found the offshore fund. I wrote a 40-page report. I was going to take it straight to the SEC and the Goldman Compliance Department on Monday morning." She stopped. Her knuckles were white. "On Sunday night, my apartment was raided by the FBI. Jack's expression didn't change, but his focus intensified. Leonard. He knew. He must have seen me digging. He was one step ahead. He'd been building a shadow case against me. He used my own fastidiousness, my own ambition. He fabricated emails. He used my personal laptop, which I'd foolishly used for work one night, to plant data. He made it look like I was the one with the offshore fund. He made it look like I was trying to front-run the deal and blackmail him. I was suspended, then fired. The SEC investigation was a nightmare. My lawyers, they cost everything. The case was eventually dropped. As Martin's source said, the evidence was Too perfect. The U.S. attorney knew it was a frame-up, but couldn't prove it. And Goldman just wanted it to go away. They exonerated Leonard, praised him for rooting out a rogue analyst. He was promoted. I was grey-listed. My name was poison. No one would hire me. No one would even take my call. I lost my career. I lost my reputation. I lost my savings. And then, her voice finally broke. A hairline fracture. My father got sick. Pancreatic cancer. The medical bills, they don't stop. They just come. I'd sold the condo. I'd sold the stocks, the car, the watch Leonard gave me. I had nothing left. So I took a job at the Crimson Steer, because it paid in cash, every night, enough to cover the hospice care, enough to be there. He died 3 weeks ago. The silence in the suite was deafening. Jack Shaw, a man who moved markets with a single word, said nothing. Finally, Aurelia stood up. So, no, Mr. Shaw. I don't want your job. I don't want your money. And I don't want your life raft. I've seen what men like you and Leonard Pierce do to get what you want. I've seen the forest, and I'd rather just be left alone with the trees. Thank you for your time. She walked to the door. Leonard Pierce, Jack said, his voice a low growl. Aurelia stopped, her hand on the handle. Of Pierce Capital Partners? Short, balding, always wears a purple Hermes tie, no matter the suit. Looks like a smug little eggplant. Aurelia turned around slowly. A new, dangerous emotion was on her face. Confusion. Yes, she said. That's him. He left Goldman to start his own fund. How do you know him? Jack Shaw smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't a cold smile. It was the hot, hungry smile of a shark that has just scented blood in the water. Because that little eggplant, Jack said, has been trying to get a meeting with me for 6 months. He's pitching my family office on his new Green Energy Revolution Fund. He's desperate for my capital. He has a meeting with me in 3 days. He looked at Aurelia. I'm not offering you a job, Ms. Keller. I'm offering you a weapon. Aurelia stood frozen by the door. The air in the room had changed. The oppressive weight of her past had suddenly been electrified by a new, terrifying possibility. I don't understand, she said. It's very simple, Jack said, pacing in front of the window. You think I'm like him. You're wrong. Leonard Pierce is a thief. He stole from his own company. He stole from pensioners. That's sloppy, and it's weak. But more importantly, he's a liar, and he's trying to lie to me. He jabbed a finger toward the city. His Green Energy Fund. I've had my team look at it. It's fine, on the surface. Decent projections. But it's small, and he's desperate to scale. He needs a big fish, a cornerstone investor, to give him legitimacy. He needs me. Jack turned to her, his eyes blazing. You came in here with a story about a man who ruined you. I don't care about that. I care that a man who builds sloppy models and frames his subordinates is now trying to get his hands on my money. So what? Aurelia said, her voice trembling. You'll tell him no. You'll warn people. Jack laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Warn them. Child, you're still thinking small. You're still the waitress. I'm offering you the chance to be the owner. Here is my real offer, Aurelia Keller. Forget the $5 million a year salary. That's boring. I will give you a $1 million finder's fee, tax-free, for the Viridian tip. Right now, you can take it, walk out that door, pay off your father's medical debt, and disappear. Live in a quiet house, by the ocean. I will never call you again. He let that hang in the air. $1 million. Freedom. An end to the scraping and the shame. Or, he said, you take option 2. You come work for me. Not as an analyst, Not as a VP. You will be my personal strategist. Your title will be whatever you want it to be. You'll answer only to me. You will have the full, unlimited resources of Shaw Innovations and my personal family office. You will have a black card with no limit. You will have Martin. You will have my undivided attention. And what will I do? Aurelia asked, her breath short. Your first project, Jack said, his smile widening, is to sit in on my meeting with Leonard Pierce. He won't know who you are. You've been out of the game for 5 years. You're just Aurelia, my new assistant. And you are going to take your rocket ship brain, and you are going to listen to his pitch, and then, he leaned in, you are going to destroy him. Destroy him? I'm not talking about an SEC complaint, Aurelia. That's what you did last time, and it got you fired. I'm talking about a real takedown. I want you to find the lie in his green energy fund. I know it's there. I can smell it. The same way you smelled the rot in Viridian. I want you to find the fraud. Find the leverage. Find the lie he's telling himself. And when you find it, we are not going to report him. We are going to break him. We're going to use it to take everything. His company, his reputation, his Hermes ties. We are going to short his fund into oblivion, buy his debt, and leave him with nothing but the same shame and humiliation he left you with. I am not offering you a job, Miss Keller, Jack Shaw said, his voice a low, seductive promise. I am offering you revenge, a front row seat, and I'm offering you the matches. Aurelia looked at the man in front of her. He was a monster. He was a shark, a predator, a titan, and he was, without question, the first person in 5 years to tell her the truth. He wasn't offering her redemption. He was offering her power. She thought about the last 5 years. The smell of the hospice, the sneer of the bar manager at the Crimson Stair, the averted eyes of her former colleagues. She thought about her father, dying in a cot when he should have been in a private room at Mount Sinai. And she thought about Leonard Pierce getting promoted. Aurelia Keller took a deep, steadying breath. She stood up straight, and for the first time, the weariness seemed to fall away from her, replaced by the cold, hard brilliance that had been dormant for half a decade. When I worked at Goldman, she said, her voice clear and hard, Leonard was having an affair with a junior partner at our law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell. He was sloppy. He used his company email. I wonder if he's still that sloppy. Jack Shaw's smile was blinding. I'll need a new laptop, Aurelia said. The best one you have. And I'll need a full team. Data miners, forensic accountants. And I want Martin. Full-time. Done, Jack said, already dialing his phone. Welcome back to the forest, Aurelia. The next 72 hours were not a blur. They were a distillation. Jack Shaw moved Aurelia from the hotel to a corporate penthouse 2 floors below his own, a sterile, glass-walled cage with a view of the entire city. But she never looked out the window. The grand ballroom on the 40th floor, a place of crystal chandeliers and gilded plaster, was transformed. It became the war room. Cables snaked across priceless antique rugs, connecting high-end data processing servers. The walls were covered not with art, but with vast, rolling whiteboards. The air crackled with the hum of electronics and the acidic smell of stale coffee and dry erase markers. Jack had flown in his sharks, a team of 6 of Shaw Innovations' most ruthless quant analysts and forensic accountants. They were men and women who normally lived in spreadsheets, but Aurelia was not like them. She was a general. She hadn't slept in 2 days. She was still wearing the same black turtleneck and jeans, her hair pulled back with a rubber band. She was a coiled spring, a predator that had finally been let out of its cage. The team, at first, was wary. They saw the Waitress story their boss had briefly mentioned. They saw someone who had been out of the game for 5 years. Ms. Keller, one of the analysts, a sharp man named Jordan, said on the first night, gesturing to a screen, "With all due respect, the Green Energy Revolution Fund is clean. The holdings are all verifiable. ESG-compliant startups. Solar, wind, hydro. It's boring, frankly. But it's not fraud." Aurelia, who was pacing, stopped. She turned. "You're looking at the wrapper, Jordan. Leonard isn't a green investor. He doesn't care about the planet. He's a vulture. He cares about a carcass. He's running the Penco play. I know he is. He's just hiding the carcass better this time." "The Penco play?" Jordan asked. "Find an asset, acquire it, load it with debt, strip the real value, the pension fund, the property, the hidden IP, and then sell the hollowed-out shell," Aurelia said, her voice a low, intense monotone. "He's doing it again. So stop looking at the green companies. That's the misdirection. Look for the outflow. Where is the capital leaving the fund? Follow the money, not the story." For 12 hours they did just that. It was Aurelia who found the first crack. "Here," she said, her voice sharp at 3 a.m. "These 3 companies, EcoPrime Solutions, TerraVolt, and Aquagen. The fund has made seed investments in all of them. But they're all registered at the same address. A P.O. box in Delaware." "They're shells," Jordan whispered, his eyes wide. He was a believer now. He's using the Green Energy Fund to raise capital, and then funneling that capital into these shells, which are then buying... What? Aurelia looked across the room to the silent man in the corner. "Martin, I need to know what these shells are buying." Martin was gone for 6 hours. He returned with a single thin file. He didn't speak, he just placed it on the table. Aurelia opened it. "Not what?" "Where?" she said, a chilling stillness in her voice. "West Virginia." "Bolivia." "That's not green tech," an accountant murmured. "No," Aurelia said, a thin, cold smile touching her lips for the first time. "It's the opposite. He's buying defunct mining rights, old coal mines, depleted lithium fields. They're brown assets. They're worthless, toxic land." Jack, who had been observing from a chair in the corner like a king watching a hunt, finally spoke. "But why? It's a worthless portfolio. It's a hole to pour money into." "It's not," Aurelia said, her brain working faster than the computer's. "Not if you don't treat it as worthless. He's found a new pension fund to raid." She moved to a keyboard, her fingers flying. "He's buying the land for pennies. Then he's getting new, fraudulent geological surveys done. Here, GeoPrime Surveying, claiming the land is ripe for green redevelopment, or even better, has undiscovered rare earth mineral deposits." She pulled up the GeoPrime reports. He's inflating the book value of this worthless land by 10,000%. He's selling shares of these shells, selling the lie to... Here it is. She froze. Her face, which had been alive with the thrill of the hunt, went pale. "Oh, Leonard, you monster." "What?" Jack said, standing. "He's selling it to the Midwestern Ironworkers Pension Fund," Aurelia whispered. "The Penco play. It's the same crime, the same victims, just a different wrapper." The room was silent. "It's brilliant," Jack said, his voice a low growl of professional admiration. "It's completely, utterly fraudulent, and he's coming to pitch me to be his green partner. The man has nerve." Aurelia looked up from the screen, her eyes no longer the eyes of a victim, but of an executioner. "He has arrogance, and that's the leverage. Jordan, get me everything on GeoPrime. I want the name of every geologist on their payroll. Martin, Find me the one with the debt, the addiction, the vice. Find me the one who's breakable. The day of the meeting. The main conference room at Shaw Innovations was a glass and steel cathedral of power. Jack sat at the head of a 40-foot black marble table. Aurelia sat at his right hand, poised, silent, and dressed in a dark suit that made her look like a shadow. At 10 a.m., Leonard Pierce walked in. He was a portrait of smug success, short, balding, and wearing a new, offensively bright purple Hermes tie that seemed to absorb all the light in the room. "Jack!" he boomed, his arms wide, as if to embrace the entire multi-billion-dollar operation. "A pleasure, a real pleasure." "Leonard," Jack said, his face a mask of neutral interest. He gestured to Aurelia. "This is my new associate, Aurelia." Leonard gave Aurelia a half glance. He didn't register the face, the name, or the danger. He saw a woman in a suit, sitting next to the man in power. He gave her a dismissive, flirtatious nod. "A pleasure, dear." He then turned his back on her, focusing his entire slimy charm on Jack. For the next 30 minutes, Leonard put on a masterclass in deception. He spoke of a paradigm shift in ESG, of unlocking alpha, of a virtuous cycle ecosystem. He was smooth, persuasive, and he was digging his own grave. Aurelia said nothing. She didn't type. She just watched him. A predator watching its prey walk into the snare. "So, Jack," Leonard finished, leaning back, the picture of confidence. "We're looking for a cornerstone investor, a visionary, someone who sees the forest, a $50 million buy-in. It's a ground floor opportunity." Jack leaned forward. "It's a good story, Leonard, a really good story." He paused. "But your geology reports, they're optimistic." Leonard's smile faltered, just a fraction. "Optimistic?" "Jack, they're certified. Geoprime is the best in the business." "Are they?" Jack asked, his voice silky. He turned to Aurelia. "Aurelia, what did we find on Geoprime?" Aurelia leaned forward into the light. Her voice, clear and cold, cut across the table. "Hello, Leonard." Time stopped. Leonard Pierce froze. He heard the voice, and it didn't match the deer he had dismissed. He turned his head slowly. He looked at her. He saw the dark suit, the cold eyes. He saw the face he hadn't seen in 5 years. His brain, so slick and fast, struggled to connect the dots. The name, the face, the hotel, the waitress. "Aurelia," he whispered. The name was a ghost. "Aurelia Keller." His face went from confusion to disbelief to pure, abject terror. What is this? You were a waitress." "I was," Aurelia said, her voice like ice. "But I've been busy. For instance, I was busy finding Dr. Robert Hine." "Who?" Leonard choked out. "The certified geologist who signed off on your West Virginia mining report," Aurelia said. "He's a very cooperative man, especially when Martin showed him evidence of his $200,000 in gambling debts." Aurelia nodded at Jack, who tapped a key. The 80-inch screen behind them, which had been showing the Shaw Innovations logo, flickered to life. A video call. A terrified, sweating man, Dr. Hine, was sitting in a lawyer's office. "Mr. Pierce," a man in the video said. "We are live. Dr. Hine is prepared to give a full, sworn affidavit that his reports were fabricated based on data you provided in exchange for a $1 million consulting fee you paid to his offshore account." "This is outrageous!" Leonard sprang to his feet, his chair screeching. "It's a set-up. You can't prove—" "I can," Aurelia said, cutting him off. A new window appeared on the screen. "I also have the wire transfer records from your green energy fund to the 3 shell companies: Ecoprime, TerraVolt, Aquagen. Your green fund has been buying toxic waste dumps, Leonard. That's market speculation, is it? Aurelia said. I also have the land title deeds. And just for old time's sake, Leonard, I have your emails. Leonard looked like he'd been shot. You're still sloppy, Aurelia said, her voice laced with a cold pity. You're still having an affair with a lawyer, this time a Miss Janine Rice at Baker Botts, and you're still using your company email to complain to her about how annoying the paperwork is for, and I quote, the stupid Midwestern Iron Workers Fund. Aurelia tapped a final key. The screen filled with Leonard's own words, his own betrayals, his own sloppy, arrogant text. Leonard didn't just sit. He collapsed. He fell back into the $1,000,000 chair, his face a mottled grey. You, he whimpered, staring at her. The ghost. Jack Shaw stood up, brushing his suit. He was enjoying this. Now, here's what's going to happen. Leonard, he said, his voice booming. In about 10 seconds, my team is going to execute a hostile, and by hostile, I mean consensual, takeover of Pierce Capital. Your board, which we've been speaking to all morning, has been informed of your malfeasance. My board, Leonard gasped. Oh yes, Aurelia said, her voice dead. They really didn't like the part about the fraud, or the emails, or the iron workers. You've been terminated. For cause. Your shares are worthless. Your fund is being dissolved, and its assets, the worthless land, are being bought by me. You can't, Leonard whimpered. I can, Jack said. I just acquired, well, everything. All those toxic land assets. But I'm not a brown investor, Leonard. I'm a green one. In 30 minutes, I'm issuing a press release. Shaw Innovations is acquiring Pierce Capital's distressed land portfolio and committing $2 billion to a groundbreaking land reclamation and carbon capture project. I'm going to be a hero. The planet will be saved. I'll get billions in government subsidies, and it will all be built on the back of your failure. But the iron workers' pension, Leonard said, a last, desperate, pathetic grasp at morality. Will be made whole, Aurelia said. The first check Shaw Innovations is cutting is to them. You stole their money. We're giving it back, with interest. Get him out, Jack said to Martin, who stepped forward. Martin put a hand on Leonard's shoulder. The man was broken. As Martin pulled the hollowed-out shell of a man from his chair, Aurelia stood. Oh, and Leonard? He turned, his eyes dead, his expensive purple tie now looking like a noose. You took my career. You took my name. You took 5 years from me. Her eyes bored into him. You left me. With nothing. She reached down to the marble table and picked up a small, empty water glass, the kind a waitress would clear without a second thought. She held it up, a toast to the void. This is my 2-week notice. She didn't throw it. She didn't smash it. She simply dropped it. It didn't break on the thick marble. It just made a dull, final thud. The sound of a life ending. 1 month later, the air at the Crimson Steer was just as thick, the light just as golden and forgiving, the scent of old money and dry-aged beef just as pervasive. But for Aurelia Keller, the world had been spun on a new axis. She was not here for a shift. She was not wearing an apron. Her hair was not in a severe, functional bun. When she walked in, the maitre d', a man who had never once made eye contact with her, nearly tripped over himself to pull out her chair. Miss Keller, a pleasure. Mr. Shaw is waiting. Your usual table, of course. Table 1. The corner booth with a panoramic view of the park, the one reserved for titans and old family matriarchs. the one she used to dread approaching. Jack Shaw was already there, nursing his Macallan 50. He didn't stand, but he smiled as she sat. It was a smile of alliance. Aurelia was transformed. She wore a custom-tailored, dark blue Armani suit that was so sharp it could have been cut from a block of obsidian. Her hair was styled in a sleek, professional bob that framed a face that was no longer haunted by fatigue, but sharpened by purpose. The stillness was still there, but it was no longer the stillness of containment. It was the stillness of pure, potential energy. "The Viridian portfolio," she said, her voice low and smooth. She slid a thin, state-of-the-art tablet across the polished mahogany. She didn't need to open it. She knew every number by heart. "We acquired them at auction last week, for pennies. As predicted." "As you predicted," Jack corrected, not even glancing at the device. He was watching her. "I've already licensed the new CRISPR patent from the German lab," she continued, ignoring the compliment. "By combining their tech with Viridian's old infrastructure, we've created a new proprietary sequencing machine. It's 40% faster, 60% cheaper, and the IP is airtight. It will corner the market in 6 months. Projections are robust." Jack let the word hang in the air, savoring it. "Robust. I like robust." He took a long, slow sip of his scotch. "Robust means my new space launch program is fully funded." "It also means," Aurelia said, and her voice softened, a fractional, almost imperceptible change, "that the new Keller wing at Mount Sinai's Oncology Center is fully endowed. Permanently. Their new research grant for early-stage pancreatic cancer detection is already posted." This was the part of her she had kept separate. This was the why. This was the non-negotiable term of her partnership. It was the part of her soul that was not for sale, the part that fueled the rest. Jack, a man who famously mocked all philanthropic endeavors as vanity projects, simply nodded. He understood. It was a display of power, just like his space program. It was just aimed in a different direction. He raised his glass. "To your father." Aurelia picked up her water glass, the crystal cool and heavy in her hand. A month ago, she would have been terrified to break it. "To new beginnings." They sat for a moment in the comfortable, powerful silence of two predators who have agreed not to eat each other. It was this silence that the waiter shattered. He was young, barely 20, with a bright, plastic smile, a shock of blonde hair, and a palpable air of ambition. He was exactly the kind of person Aurelia used to be, smart, hungry, and convinced he was better than this. His name tag read Paul. Paul zeroed in on Jack, the obvious source of power. "Mr. Shaw," he gushed, his voice a little too loud. "Another Macallan 50? An excellent choice, sir. The 82 Lafitte is also breathing beautifully tonight, if you're thinking of dinner." He had Jack's order memorized. Good. He was trying. Then he turned to Aurelia. His smile faltered, becoming a mask of condescending politeness. He hadn't bothered to memorize her. He saw the suit, but he processed woman, an accessory, the girlfriend. "And for the lady?" he asked, his tone shifting. "A glass of wine, perhaps? A nice Chardonnay?" He might as well have asked if she wanted a Shirley Temple. Jack's eyes narrowed. The temperature around their table dropped 10 degrees. He opened his mouth, a low growl already forming in his chest. He was a man who lived to verbally dismember people like Paul. It was his morning workout. But before he could speak, Aurelia put a single, perfectly manicured hand up. A small, simple, stop gesture. Jack Shaw, the titan of tech, shut his mouth. He leaned back in the booth, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. He was not just an ally. He was an audience. He was delighted. Aurelia turned her full, 100-watt analytical gaze on the young man. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was a scalpel. "Tell me," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "What's your name?" It's Paul, ma'am," he stammered, the ma'am sounding like an insult. "Paul," Aurelia said, leaning in, her eyes sharp. "You look smart. I have a little financial problem." Jack's smile widened. He was going to enjoy this. "We're thinking of a leveraged play in the quantum computing space," Aurelia continued, her voice the picture of casual inquiry. "But we're worried about the superconducting qubit stability, specifically the decoherence rates in the new silicon-based spin qubit architectures. We could go with ion traps, but the gate fidelities are problematic. What's your expert financial advice for us, Paul? Where should we put our next billion?" Paul's face went from smug to confused to utterly, devastatingly blank. The blood drained from his face, then rushed back in a hot, painful blush. He looked like she had just asked him to recite the Iliad in the original Greek. He stammered, his eyes darting to Jack for help. Jack just sipped his scotch. "I don't." Aurelia held his gaze for 1, 2, 3 more agonizing seconds. She had made her point. She had taken him apart. And then she put him back together. "It's okay, Paul," she said, her voice suddenly warm. The scalpel was gone. "It was a joke." She gave him a genuine, kind smile, a smile that acknowledged his terror and forgave him for it. This, Jack realized, was the most dangerous part. Not the attack, but the mercy. It was what made her different. "Just bring Mr. Shaw another Macallan 50, and," she added, "I'll have the same." Paul nodded, a quick, jerky motion, his entire worldview realigned. He didn't just walk away. He fled. The moment he was out of earshot, Jack Shaw threw his head back and laughed. It was not his cold, reptilian laugh. It was a real, genuine, booming laugh that turned heads across the dining room. He hit the table with the palm of his hand. "My God," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "That was magnificent. You're going to be more dangerous than I am, Aurelia." Aurelia picked up the heavy, leather-bound menu, feeling the weight of it in her hands. "He was sloppy," she said, her eyes scanning the appetizers. "He assumed. It's the same mistake you made. It's the same mistake Leonard made." She looked up from the menu, her eyes meeting his. A tiny, private smile played on her lips. "I'm not dangerous, Jack. I'm just thorough. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But for Aurelia Keller, it was a dish served at the most expensive restaurant in town, with a side of forensic accounting and a billion-dollar takeover. She didn't just get her life back, she built a new one from the ashes of the man who tried to burn her down. This story shows us that the person you underestimate the most, the one pouring your coffee, the one parking your car, the one waiting your table, might just be the one holding all the cards. They're not just waiting on you, they're waiting. So what do you think? Was Jack's offer a deal with the devil or the opportunity of a lifetime? Was Aurelia's revenge justified? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you loved this story of karma, twists, and ultimate revenge, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this video with someone who loves a good story. And most importantly, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another story of real-life drama and unexpected twists. We have new stories coming every week, and you won't want to miss what happens next.